Hello and welcome to Protect Your Copyrights with Red Giant Rights Group CEO Robert King. On today's podcast, we'll explore the power of owning your copyrights. Through real-life examples, Robert shines a light on the importance of owning your creative works. And now, here's Robert King with Protect Your Copyrights.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining our podcast, Protect Your Copyrights. My name is Robert King. I run a company called Red Giant Rights Group. We started it with the older artist in mind, those older artists who were not aware of all of their rights, particularly given to them by the U.S. Congress. And we also assist surviving family members, most of which don't have any inclination of their rights. They were not artists. They were not in the industry. They have wills, trusts, and estate attorneys handling their estates who know very little, if anything, about copyright law. So we hope that you'll check out all of our podcast episodes and learn what you can. Feel free to reach out to me personally, but let's see what we'll talk about today. Hello, creators, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, on whatever device you may be listening. Welcome to Protect Your Copyrights. This is Robert, and I wanted to talk today about ownership. Ownership, as you know, some of you don't, and some of you don't always think about it, ownership is king. Why do you think that they sign you to that record deal or publishing company when you're a young artist, new artist, or even older artists? I'm 52 years old, and if I had any talent, or talent enough for somebody that thinks that they could exploit my talent and make money off of it, they would sign me to a record deal. Why do you think they sign you to a contract, often heavily weighted in their favor, in the first place? Because they know ownership is of great value. They know that ownership is the difference. They know that whether or not this makes money, you got to own it first in order to make money. And so not all creatives spend a lot of time thinking about the business side of it. I am a creative, and I sing and was a singer for a while. I went to college for acting and musical theater. And have done my share of shows singing on stage, and have even released an album on my own label, singing different kinds of songs. So, and a songwriter. I've released original music. So, I am nowhere as successful as you, or as our clients for sure, but as some of the artists out there, particularly some of these mature artists, classic artists, catalog artists. But the whole concept of ownership is so valuable, but not all creatives think from a business perspective. They don't look through the business prism. They are creatives, which is fine, which is great. So I have a creative bent, but then I've spent the last 25 years in business. And so I look through everything, look at everything through that prism. This is so important, particularly right now. It always has been, but particularly right now, to view yourself as an entrepreneur, to view yourself as a small business owner, to view yourself. It's interesting, when I look back at some of the great ones who got it early, like Dolly Parton, who started her own publishing company, and all of those all those songs that she wrote from the very beginning, they were under her publishing company. And she just knew. She was savvy about the business side of it. It's interesting to do research and see how people, famous or recognized or successful artists, they may have been signed with a publishing company at some point, but then they very quickly opened up their own. They may have been signed with a record label at some point, but then some very quickly opened up their own record label. So the concept, and that is, I mean, just think about everything you've heard about Prince and writing "slave" on the side of his face, because the record deal that he signed he was giving his ownership away. So they know that ownership is important. They know that it is valuable, and we as artists need to become a little more savvy about that. I know all of us can't run record labels. I know all of us can't run your own publishing company, but you want to be strategic about it so that you are making the highest percentage that you possibly can on the sale of your creation, and you want to arm yourself with the knowledge to understand what the true value of your creation is. So let's talk about ownership for a few minutes here, because we at Red Giant, we spend a lot of time thinking about, okay, if we're not going to own these copyrights, then dadgummit, we're going to negotiate a better percentage than these old. Here's the deal. Congress knew this. The U.S. Congress knew this. Legislators, senators, congressmen, congresswomen, they knew this many years ago when they came up with this whole concept of termination. What that means is that, and just so you understand, I run this company, Red Giant Rights Group. We assist older artists with copyright protection and apply the intricacies of the U.S. Copyright Act to their advantage. I am not an attorney. We use some of the best copyright attorneys in the country. And for clarity's sake, copyright attorneys are those who specialize in copyright law, or particularly terminations. That's different from an entertainment attorney. Not all entertainment attorneys understand terminations, understand copyrights. And I've been in the room with at different meetings with a group of entertainment attorneys who were talking about this particular topic, and even inside of this room, not everybody either agrees or understands what's going on with termination. So this is a hot topic now, primarily because the law that was written in 76 and instituted in 78 is just now, in the past 5 to 10 years, the intricacies of it, the language of it is just now becoming applicable. So nobody thought about it for 20 years, 25, 30 years. But right now, it's very important. It's very hot. As a matter of fact, there is a window of time, and if you miss the window in certain cases, then you've lost your opportunity to do something forever. But back to Congress. Congress knew this, and they looked at trying to protect an artist. They knew that there were artists that were desperate, who really wanted to have their art heard, right? Their songs sung, or their band playing. So they signed these record deals that you can't understand the language. I mean, I've read them. I mean, you're talking about 30 to 40 pages, and because I am somewhat of a creative, in addition to being a business guy, the creative side of me is looking through this and they go, this is ridiculous. How is one ever going to understand all of this? And I just want to play songs. I just want to sing music. I just want to write. So and the concept of, okay, I'm going to create something, but I don't know what the value of it is when I create it. I may feel good about it, and I may, we go do a demo of it, and somebody likes it, they put it on their album, and is it a single, is it not a single, is it just on the album, is it on the B-side, does the marketing team spend time on it, are they going to promote it, or is the sales team going to send it to the radio, and is the radio going to play it, are people going to listen to it? So there's a lot of stuff that goes into creating a piece of art. Particularly, we're talking about music, right? Songwriters and recording artists. But the same thing is true with authors. The same thing is true with screenwriters, with the playwrights. You don't know what you have when you create the piece of art. They're all our little babies, and we all love them, and we want them to grow, and we want them to have beautiful lives. But you never know. You really don't know. So what Congress did was they said, okay, well, let's say there is value. Let's say you created it, and 20, 30, 40 years later, there is value to what you created, and people are still making money off of what you created. So we're in 2020. 30 years ago is 10, 20, 1990? Is that right? 40 years ago is 1980. So just think about stuff in the 80s and 90s. Do we today, 30 to 40 years later, do we have any interaction with those great pieces of art? From the 1930s and 40s. Do you know we're in the throes of the pandemic and coronavirus, and I'm fascinated by over the weekend seeing what the top movies were. How you have top grossing movies every weekend, the box office hits. So right now, because nobody's going to the movie theater, the people are going to the drive-in or whatever. They're social distancing in certain movie theaters or whatever. But they're not playing new movies; they're playing old movies. Do you know what the successful ones are? Jaws, Star Wars, Superman, Jurassic Park. They're all from the 70s and 80s, maybe some 90s. What about classic? What about radio stations that are classic rock, totally dedicated to all they do is play 1970s classic rock music? That was 50 years ago. So if you're a songwriter or a recording artist and you created something in the 70s or 80s or 90s, and here it is decades later, and people are still listening to it, playing it. Think about what happened to Glee a couple of years ago, right? Glee was very popular. They had if you don't know what Glee is, it's a program about like a chorus or a choir, a Glee club, Glee singers at a high school. And so, it's the story of their lives, but then they also sing. And so obviously a ton of songs were used. But think about what Glee did to Don't Stop Believin'. So Don't Stop Believin' when was that? Late 70s, early 80s? I don't know right off the top of my head, but it was back then. So Jonathan Cain and I think he wrote "Don't Stop Believing," or maybe Steve. I'm not sure if Steve Perry was on that, but let's just say the songwriters of, let's say, Jonathan Cain, the pianist for Journey. He writes "Don't Stop Believing." So that's a great song, and it's been heralded and played billions of times over the past 30 years, and every generation likes it. But Glee takes it and gives it a brand new life to a brand new generation. If they hadn't heard it before, now they have a new version of it. So did Jonathan Cain, or let's say it was Jonathan Cain and Steve Perry, when they were sitting around, whoever Jonathan Cain wrote that with, were they sitting around when they wrote it and they said, this song is going to be popular 50 years from now? Maybe with "Don't Stop Believing," but probably not, right? They wrote from their heart. They wrote something really cool. They felt really great about it. And so they put it together and they released it. The hopes are that it will be exciting and there will be an audience, I've heard people refer to it as evergreen, that it is an evergreen, and that there will be audiences for that particular piece of art, that content, for years, generations, decades, generations to come. And "Don't Stop Believing" may be one of those songs. We may be singing that song. I'm 52. We may be singing that song when I'm 80. My grandchildren may be singing "Don't Stop Believing." And their grandchildren may be singing "Don't Stop Believing." And what's beautiful about it is if Jonathan Cain and his family, or if he had co-writers and their families, for decades will benefit from them sitting at a piano or them releasing, writing that song and releasing it. All that to say, Congress got it. They said, okay, wait a second. An artist creates work, and then why they sign a contract that gives the record labels and the publishers, or whatever, in this case the publishers in book publishing, why do they have the rights to this piece of work now forever, or the life of the copyright? So the language actually is pretty hilarious. I don't have this is a summary of it, but I don't have the actual words in front of me. But you can look it up and see. But it was the concept of that artists are not very smart, probably drunk, destitute. Right, the poor, the concept of the poor artist. For all of these reasons, they've signed their art away, or for a small percentage of their art, and so if their art has value decades later, then they get a chance to come back to the table and either renegotiate original terms or get their art back. Sorry to interrupt. This is Robert King, CEO of Red Giant Rights Group. I want to make sure that you know that we are available to answer your questions. Feel free to call me on my cell phone for a confidential conversation. 917-848-9934. Again, 917-848-9934. And now back to the podcast. So that's what they put into the law. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about this concept of terminations. Congress has empowered artists to go back to the table, get another bite of the apple, another seat at the table, to go back and look at, those original contracts, and B, to potentially recapture or terminate those grants so that they can own it. Now, the key to all of this is ownership. As we started this podcast talking about ownership. What are you doing with your art so that you can potentially own it? And if not own it, own more of it. I would tell you it's a little tricky out there, but Congress has made it so that you can at least try to go back and get it. On the publishing side, you got a really good shot. And the publishing side can be, as you know, can be very lucrative. And just think about it. Let me give you an example. And this is a real life example. And it's not necessarily true to every. You know what? I'll take the basics of the example and make it more true for everybody. Okay. So let's say your song is making $100,000 a year. All right. So $100,000 a year, and you have a co-publishing deal, which means 50% to the publisher, 50% to the writer, to their publishing company. So you have a co-pub deal, and it's a 50-50 deal. So you terminate. So you go from, let's say the song makes $100,000, you're making 50. Now you've gone from $100,000 to, I'm sorry. The song makes $100,000, you make $100,000 with your 50%. The song makes $200,000. Okay? So now you've gone, if you were able to terminate, you've gone from 100 to 200. But you're going to have to get somebody to administer it. So you're going to pay them 10, 15, 20%. Let's say 10%. So you've gone from making $100,000, 10% of 200 is 20. So now you're making $180,000. That's a difference of $80,000 a year. And let's say you've got another 50 years on this copyright. Now, I'm not very good at math, but I think $80,000 times 50 is $4 million. So it is the difference, just this exercise, you're making $100,000 a year. But the difference for your family over the next 50 years, the difference for your heirs over the next 50 years, if you're able to maintain that income stream of 100, and look, guys, if it's making $100,000 40 years later, if it's making $100,000 a year, or $10,000, if it's making $10,000 a year 40 years later, then it's going to continue to make money. And if you put it in the right hands, if you find the right partners, it may even make more money than it's currently making. And that's what we want to do. We want to exploit the copyrights, but we only want to exploit copyrights, understand the word ownership. You only want to go out of your way and exploit the hell out of copyrights if you own them or you have a greater percentage of them. If you signed a deal and it's a 95-5 deal, you signed it 40, 50 years ago, why the hell are you going out and pushing, trying to sell that record? There's no incentive. So you can make 5% and the record label makes 95%? That doesn't make any sense. Truly, it doesn't make any sense. CENTS. So you have an opportunity. Congress has given you an opportunity through the concept of ownership to go back and try to either A, negotiate that record deal, or B, terminate that publishing contract. Now, let me say this to you, and we're gonna talk straight here for a sec. This is not easy. And you can do it yourself. Anybody can do it, frankly. You can do it yourself. You can call up just about any attorney and they can do it. So it's not it, but to think that this is an easy process to get this done for you, because in a balance sheet, a multi-billion-dollar record label or publishing company sees your song as an asset. Whether it's a sound recording, or whether it's a composition, song you wrote, or a book in the publishing element, or a screenplay, or a play, they see it as an asset. They know that somebody could come around. Everybody's looking for content these days. Somebody could come around and say, hey, I know that asset's been sitting there for 30 years, but let's repurpose it and make a movie out of it. Let's repurpose it and put it into a soundtrack. What happened to, goodness gracious, what in the world happened to those songs that were in Guardians of the Galaxy a couple of years ago? That soundtrack blew up. All of those wonderful songs from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, they blew up because they were associated with this Marvel, multi-million-dollar, successful, heavily branded movie. The licensed with the movie. So they see it as an asset. They know that owning either a piece or all of that asset is very valuable, and it's on their balance sheet. So if you come knocking on the door, knock, 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 hey, I'd like to take my assets back from you, multi-billion-dollar publisher, multi-billion-dollar record label. Will you? Can I have them back, please? What do you think their response is? What do you think happens? No. It's not easy. It's not, actually, I was going to say it's not pretty. Actually, it's rather ugly. And for you to think that you can do it by yourself, good, go for it. Have fun. Hope it works out for you. For you to think that you can go to your friend who's an attorney and have them do it, good luck. For you to even think that you can have your entertainment attorney, in some cases, your entertainment attorney. You know, I understand. When I got a call from a household name, wonderful lady. I got a call from her this week. And she is, you would absolutely know who she is if I said her name. She was sweet as pie. I absolutely loved talking to her. And she didn't know anything about being able to protect these sound recordings. And she said, I'll put my, representation in touch with you. And I talked to the representation. For whatever reason, the representation says, oh, yeah, we've known about this. Yeah, we talked about it. Okay, well, why didn't you do it? Oh, well, we don't talk about decisions that we make. Yeah, because you don't know how to do it. Or there is no reason not to do it. There is absolutely no reason. Well, it's tough for me to say that. I understand there's always a reason. But let me tell you, by and large, there's no reason for you not to do this. This is to your advantage. And if you have people that say, oh, well, it doesn't really matter, it doesn't really happen, that is horse manure. I have to, I don't think that my podcast is labeled as adult content or whatever the, whatever the delineation is. If they tell you that, they don't know what they're talking about. You need somebody who is, it's kind of like going to, I liken it to if you have chest pains and you go to your primary care physician and they say, oh, okay, cool. Well, if you don't mind, lay back. I'm going to open up your chest real quick here, and let's see what's going on with your heart. No. This is, we are people who work in this space. We're cardiologists. And we specialize in this particular area. And you know what's awesome about what we're doing at Red Giant is, what's awesome about it is that we know when we don't know something. Very frustrating running into managers, agents, even entertainment attorneys who don't know something, but act as if they know something, or because they don't know it, it can't be true. It is so arrogant to run across these people, artists, even managers, particularly agents, peripherally, PR people, attorneys. Just because they don't know about it or understand it doesn't mean it's not true. No. Again, this is they're actually doing more damage than good. So the concept, the way we approach it at Red Giant is ownership. Ownership is of great value to you. And we're going to look at your entire book of, let's say your entire canon, your all of your creative works, and figure out the best way to get the most money, the most to create the most value out of your assets, because we see them as assets. Believe me, they see them, the multi-billion-dollar record label, the multi-billion-dollar publisher, the multi-billion-dollar book publisher. They see them as assets. And so the other thing that's hilarious about this is federal law, right? This is not something we made up. This is federal law. Yeah, I've spoken to record executives and said, hey, why don't you send out a letter? Why don't you let these people know? And they look at me like like I've got a third head or a second head. What? I mean, they look at me like I am crazy that they would let their artist know that the artist has the opportunity to recapture or terminate their copyrights. Whoa! Did you get a phone call? When your window closed, when your window opened, did you get a phone call and say, hey, just wanted to let you know, this is available to you. We, you've got a window of time here to get this done. We're happy to introduce you to somebody, or you can go to this website, or, good luck. Ask somebody about it. They didn't do that. When your window is closing, as it's coming to a close, did they call you and say, hey, just wanted to give you a heads up, you're about to miss your window here. If you don't do anything, that means we're going to own those copyrights till they go into public domain. No, they aren't doing that. So, and I've had artists tell me, well, I have such a good relationship with Sony or Warner or Universal Music Publishing Group. I have such a good relationship with them. Did they call you? Did they let you know that this was possible? Did they let you know that you could terminate? Did they let you know that you could potentially own your copyrights? No. The relationship is a ruse. So that's what we do. This is our specialty, and we spend our time trying to figure out the best way to get the most on behalf of our clients in the way of ownership. So if it's not owning it outright, and you don't, just to be clear, you're never really going to own it outright, because even if you own it outright, you're not a publisher. And so you're going to have to find an administrator. So you're going to give away 10%. You can own it outright, I guess, but you're going to give away 10%, 15, 20% anyway. There's always going to be a percentage that you're paying to somebody else. It's just like these rock stars. They're paying a percentage to a manager. These actors, they're paying a percentage to an agent. They're paying a percentage to a stylist. So there's always something going on, to a chef. There's always something going on where you're it's not 100% coming your direction, but you want to own the most of it that you possibly can. That's why we go through this process. The process is brutal. and it's not something that happens overnight. It takes time. They are in my experience, the record labels, the publishers, they quickly inform you when you go to them and say, hey, let's say you did this by yourself. Okay, let me tell you what's going to happen. You contact them and say, hey, I have these rights. And you know what they do? They get one of their fancy attorneys to send you a letter that says, hey, go jump in a lake. You don't have any rights. So now you're looking at a letter that is, I've read the letters. They are frightening. If you don't know any better, they are scary, and they are debilitating, because you think to yourself, well, heck, I don't have any rights. And again, it's a tactic. Well, let me tell you what's going on right now. Right now in our courts, there are a couple of cases against some major record labels that are, I mean, you've seen the ones already that have been either settled outside of court or have gone through a couple of different stages in the courts that have to do with publishers. But right now, we're looking at sound recordings, record labels. The worst thing that could ever happen to these record labels is if they lose these cases in the court that say recording artists have rights, because record labels are saying recording artists don't have any rights. So there are a couple of cases right now, and some interesting rulings recently, decisions recently in the circuit court, in Court of Appeals, I think. I have to go check. But again, I'm not an attorney. But I've read some of these interesting points of view that, let me tell you, if something sticks, then it's going to be really good for recording artists. But the point is, you should be actively pursuing this process. If you are creative, you created works that are over 25 years old, and those works still have value, and frankly, even if they don't have value, that's great for us. We run into some copyrights that are making nothing, $0, and have made nothing for the last 10 years. Why am I still interested in helping that artist? Because I know that right now, synchronizations and licensing is more needed, popular. We have more production companies that are creating content and looking for music to be synced with their content than ever before in the history of the world. So I know that an asset is an asset, is an asset, is an asset. And we want to help artists get those assets to build up their portfolios. So that is the argument for you gotta own. And if if nothing else, artist, can I talk to you for a sec? Even if you're a manager listening to this, will you please listen to this through the prism of an artist? An artist deserves to own it. They created it. The record label or publisher have made plenty of money on it over the past decades. There's no reason to feel sorry for those people. They've made plenty of money. We should do everything possible in order to get those rights back, or to make greater percentages on those rights on behalf of the artists. And you need an expert to do that, to help you with that, and that's what we do. So, bottom line, ownership. Think like an entrepreneur. Think like an asset manager. Think like a financial expert. These people who are running the books, they see your art as assets, and so do we. And we want to assist you, if at all possible, to make sure that you are making every possible dime that you deserve, and that you get a chance to own your copyrights for the rest of your life and for the life of the copyrights to the benefit of your heirs, your surviving family members. I'd love to talk to you about this. As always, feel free to call me. I think the phone numbers are on the website, and I think we put them on. I think we put them at the beginning or the end of this podcast, so be sure and write down that phone number. Interact with us. Follow the podcast so that you can listen to other ideas that we have for you to consider, and also share this with your fellow creatives. If you know songwriters or recording artists or authors or playwrights, screenwriters, the beautiful thing about the Copyright Act is that it covers all created works. So if you at some point signed a contract granting rights to somebody decades ago, then this may be right for you, and we can do our investigation and see if there's any value there. Thank you so much for listening. It's Robert King, CEO of Red Giant Rights Group. Look forward to talking to you on another topic next time.
Thanks for listening to Protect Your Copyrights with Red Giant Rights Group CEO Robert King. For a confidential conversation with Robert, give him a call on his cell phone at 917-848-9934. Once again, that's 917-848-9934. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and be sure to join us next time on Protect Your Copyrights with Robert King. Woo!